Let's talk about what we're calling the architecture of dependency. Think about exactly how you woke up this morning. Chances are you followed a schedule that somebody else designed, right? You just traded the next 8, maybe 10 hours of your life for a number on a paycheck. And let's be real, a number that barely keeps you functional enough to just wake up and do the whole shebang all over again tomorrow.
So, is this the life you actually chose, or is it just the life you were handed? We look at our daily routines and we just casually call them normal. But in today's explainer, we're going to break down the undeniable structure of our daily lives and ask, is this actually normal, or is it literally just a story written for us by a system that desperately requires our absolute compliance?
Let's dive right into Section 1, the system and the actual architecture of your days. Okay, let's shift focus away from your dreams and potential for a second and zoom way out to look at the cold, hard architecture of how your days are actually built. It looks kind of like this. You've got the 7 a.m. commute, 9 a.m. work, the slog of the 6 p.m. commute home, and by 8 p.m. you're probably just staring at a screen, desperately trying to decompress before you inevitably hit the pillow at 11 p.m. I mean, look at how little white space is actually left for you when the day is done. The system demands almost everything.
Now here's a number from our source material that absolutely delivers a gut punch. 90,000. That is the number of hours the average American spends at work over the course of a lifetime. To put that into perspective, that equates to over 10 full years. 10 years of awake, alert, capable life, just gone forever. And in exchange, most people get just enough to survive until the next cycle begins. Think about the 1920s industrial age. Back then, a factory worker was literally chained to a physical machine, utterly dependent on a daily wage, and kept way too tired to question the setup. Fast forward to today. Sure, the aesthetic has changed to open-plan offices and fancy ergonomic chairs, but the core mechanism? It hasn't changed a bit. You're still chained to a desk, completely dependent on a salary, and kept entirely too exhausted to ask deeper questions. The extraction of your output works exactly the same way.
So how does this modern version of control actually work without physical chains? Well, it relies on a cascade of expenses. First, you sign a massive mortgage. Next up, you take on those heavy car payments. Then, you start stacking endless monthly subscriptions for streaming services, apps you barely use, you name it. The genius of modern control is that it dictates that the cost of not showing up to work tomorrow is just catastrophically high.
Which brings us to the ultimate trap of normalcy. Listen to this. They don't need to control your mind. They only need to control your expenses. By building a lifestyle that absolutely requires a massive salary, you basically guarantee that you can never, ever step off the hamster wheel that provides it.
Which brings us to Section 2, the drain, and what we're calling the wake-up call.
We really need to transition from this systemic trap to something way more personal, the psychological theft of your most finite resource. Let's shatter a massive myth right now. Time is not money. Actually, scratch that. Comparing the two is completely missing the point. Money is entirely replaceable. It can be lost, earned again, invested. But time? Time is a strictly finite resource. Once a minute is lost, it is gone for good. And the modern economic system is just elegantly designed to keep you completely distracted while your true wealth, your time, drains away totally unnoticed.
And then there's this alarming metric, 7. The average American spends 7 hours a day staring at screens. Just think about that math for a second. You work for 8 hours, you commute for maybe 2, and then these digital algorithms swoop in and aggressively consume the tiny, exhausted fraction of life you actually have left over.
This leads to a truly profound realization from our sources. Exhaustion is not a side effect of the system. Exhaustion is the product. Think about it. If you're left with only 3 hours of completely exhausted free time at the end of the day, you simply cannot rebel. A tired mind doesn't ask deep questions about its existence. And a tired mind definitely doesn't have the bandwidth to go out and build its own freedom.
Instead, what happens? That tired mind turns to an infinite supply of cheap comfort. We're talking Netflix, DoorDash, endless scrolling loops on social media until your eyes practically cross. Now, I want to be super clear here. The source material isn't framing these digital comforts as inherently evil, but they are pre-packaged exits. Exits sold to us so we can avoid the profound, biting discomfort of realizing that our lives are not entirely our own.
I really want you to pause and ask yourself a question right now. When was the last time you had a real original thought prompted by absolutely nothing? Seriously, try to remember the last time you just sat in total silence, completely unplugged from someone else's content, notifications, or agenda. Most of us never get a quiet moment long enough to even hear our own inner voice anymore.
And here is perhaps the absolute cruelest reality the source points out. The system aggressively claims your highest energy years, your 20s and 30s, your absolute peak capacity for change, your sharpest mental state. All of it gets consumed by entry-level wages, paying off student debt, and building someone else's dream, only to eventually be replaced without any real ceremony.
All right, let's move into Section 3, the escape, and how we go about redefining wealth.
We've spent time looking at the mechanical tension of this trap. Now let's find that warm, quiet clarity required to actually escape it, because it really requires a massive paradigm shift. Consider these two scenarios. On one side, you have someone earning 100 grand, but with exactly 0 hours of their day controlled by them. On the other side, someone earning $40,000, but with complete control of their mornings. The core thesis of this explainer is that true wealth absolutely must be measured in time controlled. The person who owns their mornings, they are fundamentally richer.
You might be wondering, why is that? It's simple. Because mornings compound, attention compounds, freedom compounds. Escaping this trap is not about being vastly smarter or luckier than the next guy. It's about making a deliberate, strategic decision to defend your time, even if it's just 1 hour a day. If you do that, you let your autonomy compound over the years.
The mindset shift here is absolutely crucial. Freedom is not the absence of work, it is the ownership of it. I want to be clear, this explainer is not pitching some get-rich-quick scheme. If anything, it's a get-free scheme. It's about ruthlessly identifying a skill, a knowledge base, or some creative output that completely decouples your value from your mandatory hourly presence sitting in an office somewhere.
And that brings us to our conclusion, the final choice.
Let's bring this whole thing back to the present moment. I really want to challenge you to look closely at the cage door, because here's the wild truth. It has actually been open this entire time. The cage is simply the assumption that nothing is negotiable, that this is just how life works. But be warned, the algorithm is going to try its hardest to wash this realization away. By Monday morning, it's going to try to pull you right back into compliance. That is, unless you consciously choose to sit with the discomfort of this truth right now.
Which leaves us with this massive, undeniable question. When do you decide to start? We all have a strictly finite number of days on this earth, and not a single one of them is ever coming back. No way! The choice of your direction from this exact moment forward rests squarely on your shoulders.
I want to leave you with a quote from the source material. The most dangerous man is the one who has nothing left to lose except his time. So as you finish up this explainer and inevitably step back into your daily routine, what are you going to do with your next hour?